In the off-the-record queue this week, our guest is Representative Matt Koleszar, Democrat from Plymouth, who's unhappy with some House Republicans. Our lead story, the Republican Speaker embraces a tax increase of all things on electric vehicles. On the OTR panel, Zoe Clark, Beth LeBlanc, and Bill Ballenger. Sit in with us as we get the inside out. Off the record.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by Bellwether Public Relations, a full-service strategic communications agency partnering with clients through public relations, digital marketing, and issue advocacy. Learn more at bellwetherpr.com. And now, this edition of Off the Record with Tim Skubick.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Off the Record, I think. Yes, there we go. Hi, guys. Welcome to Studio C.
The show is still on.
Yeah, I guess it is. So here, the Earth stopped in Lansing this week because in one sentence, the name Republican Speaker Matt Hall favors a tax increase. What is that all about? Let's take a look. For the 55,000-plus EV owners in Michigan, a heads up tonight. The Republican Speaker of the Michigan House wants you to pay your fair share to fix the roads, he says. Make no mistake, Republican Speaker Matt Hall is still opposed to an across-the-board increase for every motorist. But EV owners, that's another question.
The drivers of electric vehicles should pay their fair share, and so, you don't see that happening. So if we are going to look for new revenue, then I think we should look at those electric vehicles.
Governor Gretchen Whitmer has consistently asked for new revenue. And here, for the first time, the Republican Speaker is saying, let's do it. And he even uses the term tax increase, which is certainly something new for him.
If Whitmer needs a tax increase, I'm just saying we could start looking at whether the EVs are paying their fair share. They're not paying the same amount as the conventional motorists, and so that should be equalized. I could support that. That would be more revenue. That would be a tax increase, but only for the electric vehicles. Well, I don't think that we should be putting this on the backs of the working people.
The data suggests that 60% of the EV owners earn over $100,000 a year, while 20% earn under $50,000. The Speaker says this about that.
The EV drivers, these are more expensive cars. These are usually better off financially people. They're getting all kinds of government incentives.
However, the environmental lobby points out that EV owners already pay a higher state registration fee than regular drivers, and to hit them with more revenue may discourage the purchase of EVs, which does not help create cleaner air. The governor has not signed off on all this yet, but if she and the Speaker can work it out, the chances of EV fees going up, well, those chances will go up too, big time. What did you all think?
I thought, why wasn't that in the roads package? If he's in support of it, why not put it up for a vote? And that wasn't part of the roads package that they passed last week.
Well, maybe he wasn't there when they put it up, mentally. Not saying that he's
to that point.
Let me strike that, Your Honor. Let me rephrase that. Maybe he had not come to that conclusion at that point when they released the plan. Because remember, he's waited up to this issue. Mm-hmm. He's taken some baby steps until he finally closed the door.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these plans for the roads, right, they put out a lot of different options, kind of a buffet of options that they're putting out there, and you pick and choose which ones you want at the end of the day. Whitmer, with her proposal, did the same thing, put out a lot of different tax increases and different things that you could piece together to make money.
He has rejected both of those, by the way.
Yes.
The vaping thing and the other one.
Yeah, so he's not in favor of that portion of the buffet, apparently. But I think, the real question is, when are they going to come together and pick what works best? And I think that's what everybody is waiting for, right? Like House Republicans can pass their plan. They even got some bipartisan support for it. But when are they going to come to the table with Senate Democrats? When are they going to come to the table with the governor? There are a lot of unanswered questions.
The other plan was marijuana. So what did you make of this?
You're right. Pot for potholes. We
Yes.
cannot not say this morning. Look, and to Beth's point, what's really fascinating, right, is like both sides. We should just say both sides, meaning House Republicans and Whitmer, because those are the only ones who have put out a plan, as both Matt Hall and Whitmer are quick to tell folks, right? They're at about the same dollar amount. So, let's just start there. They're a little more than $3 billion is what they want to put on the table. What I think is really interesting with this new EV tax increase is both Whitmer and Matt Hall are now sort of finding these bête noirs, these sort of boogie men to put taxes on, right? For Republicans, for Matt Hall, it's all about EVs, right? That's sort of this woke Democratic culture, and, the wealthier can pay. And for Whitmer, who she's, targeting, right, is the big businesses, which we've talked about on the show before, this idea that we're going to tax, Meta and big social media companies, the sort of big bad boogeymen. And so it's really interesting to see sort of where both sides are coming down on the what is politically okay to say we would put a tax on or make someone pay.
The governor said she wanted a tax increase. Matt Hall says, I agree on this point.
Well, look, I mean, for him to propose an EV tax is like playing right into the Trump MAGA base. I mean, they don't like EVs. I mean, Trump campaigned against EVs.
But they like Teslas now.
Well, the world is turning upside down. The former Tesla lovers are now Tesla haters and vice versa. But I'm just saying, remember 6 years ago, Whitmer puts out 25 cent per gallon, 45% increase in the gas tax, and asked for negotiations with Mike Shirkey and the Republicans, saying, let's talk.
Crickets.
Let's work. And there were crickets. Nothing happened. The Republicans let her twist in the wind with this proposal out there. Nothing happened. And so, honestly, it's been Matt Hall who's been driving the conversation about a road package. He came out with his plan before Whitmer did this year. And he's kind of dared the Democrats to meet him halfway, and he's embellished it, he's added on to it, and the latest iteration is, okay, a tax on EVs. And so, let's see when the rubber hits the road. Are they actually going to get together? Are they going to negotiate? And I don't think at this point we have any idea what's going to come out of the mix.
I predict there will be more user fees that become part of this package. There's not enough EV owners in the state to fill more than 3 or 4 potholes, okay, if they're big. So there's got to be other user fees, I think, in this package. But this is the camel's nose under the tent. Here's the governor's opening. She's got the speaker saying, let's do a tax increase.
Well, and it's great in your setup piece that we watched, too, where Matt Hall literally says Whitmer tax increase. Like already plotting that one about the messaging.
Well, yes, but you know what? It is her ownership. She's the one saying raise taxes.
Well, and what'll be interesting, too, is whether, much like minimum wage, tipped wage, and ESTA, whether everyone's sort of going to hold hands and jump in together and come up with a compromise that everybody can walk away with.
Excuse me, truck weights. Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, Hall came out and said, I'd be willing to look at truck weights. And that's been a long-standing debate. Every time you talk about road funding, can we tax trucks more?
Axles, fewer axles.
All that stuff. It always dies. The truck lobby kills it. But this time, Hall is actually talking now about increasing truck weights the way he was talking about an EV tax a month ago. He said, well, we need to look at it. Now he's saying, I could support that. Well, next month maybe he'll say, I can support increasing truck weight as part of an overall package.
He wants to reduce the truck weights, but he doesn't want to put more money on the truckers, because I asked him that. He had a chance to say yes. He didn't say yes. He went into all these regulations, the axles. And I mean, and you're right, the truck lobby has killed this stuff for 40 years.
Right.
So lots of luck, right?
Yeah, and I think, let's go a little meta here and just talk about what we've spent the first, 5 or 10 minutes of the show talking about, which is Matt Hall. And Matt Hall just sort of running the show right now in Lansing.
At the 3-month mark of this legislative process, it's Matt Hall and company.
Yes. And I mean, some of this is because there is this sort of feeling in Lansing, whether it's a vacuum of leadership, but he's, holding near weekly press conferences. He's accessible.
In fact, there's one that's still going on.
And it's fascinating to watch. I feel like I haven't seen a Speaker of the House like this since a Jace Bolger, who just strategy, the politicking seems to both really enjoy it and is just sort of constantly on offense and on the move. Now, how long that lasts and what that looks like vis-a-vis a Rhodes deal, I mean, the next big hurdle after Rhodes, if that gets done, of course, is the budget. And we're already having conversations about will the budget get done on time. He puts up this $20 billion budget, within hours and makes folks vote. I mean, it's things that just we haven't seen in Lansing.
He's been somewhat of a surprise. Nobody expected this kind of dynamism from a Republican speaker at this point, and yet he has basically run the show for the last 3 months.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit of a reflection of at the federal level, right? Like you put out so much that it's a little overwhelming for folks, right? And they can't, and even with the Rhodes deal, it moved through quickly. You had a lot of different pieces, but when you get down into the weeds of those pieces, there are some holes that it leaves in the budget. And there are some questions that remain about how they're going to be funding it. If it's through EVs, if it's through truck weights, okay, but that wasn't part of the Rhodes plan, but I guess you got something out there on paper now.
Well, and to answer your question, how long will this last? Read my lips. Forever. This is a dominant gene that this gentleman has. Okay,
I think so. Yeah,
it's not a recessive gene; it's a dominant gene.
Well, and what'll be really fascinating, even more, right? Is let's talk about the legislation about driver's licenses, right? That he puts up on the board to make Democrats take what he believes is a tough vote.
As a favor to the former speaker.
We're not even in an election year, right? And we're already seeing votes being put up that are putting Democrats in tough places. I mean, imagine once we get into 2026 and the votes that could get put up in the board. So to your point, to answer your point, to my point, I agree.
Goodness gracious. Let's write that down. What time is it, guys?
March 28th. No, I think, I don't see it not, ending anytime soon.
He's picking up Democratic votes on some bills. He's got these wedge issues going into the caucus, and some of them are responding. It's kind of a return to the old days, unlike the last 2 years when everything was monolithic, heavy-handed, total.
Well, with Karen Whitsitt, though, you can constantly say things are bipartisan.
And Beth, he just wallows in the fact that he could take on Winnie Brinks. Okay, where's her plan? In the news conference, that was not an embrace.
No, he's definitely harped on the fact that the Senate Democrats have not produced a plan. Now, Senate Democrats have said, look, there's a lot of pieces on the table. Let's all just sit down and start assembling them.
Well, plus, it's not the Senate Democrats' job. It's the governor's job. She's the lead Democrat on this issue, isn't she?
I don't know. They're all independently elected bodies. I feel like everybody can come to the table with a different plan if they really want to.
All right, so then why aren't they there?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
Hall is treating Brinks like she's an appendage of Whitmer. He really just has to make a deal with Whitmer. That's what it's all about. Brinks will go along with whatever Whitmer wants. That's his attitude.
All right, you spoke to Ms. Nessel, the Attorney General, this week, and she didn't mention the governor's name, but by inference, she said what?
Well, I talked to Nessel last week.
Not to put words
I
in
talked
your
to
mouth.
Mike Duggan this week, and what I think all of us are really fascinated on right now is this sort of identity crisis within the Democratic Party, and some Democrats, progressives, right, who really want this sort of like fight like hell mentality vis-a-vis Trump, and others who are taking a more pragmatic approach, like Governor Gretchen Whitmer, right, meeting with the president in D.C., who's saying, look, like I may not like it, but I have to work with this person to get
Ms.
things
Nessel
done.
says
Basically, Democrats who work with Donald Trump are going to regret it.
Sooner than later?
Yeah.
And
she said before it's too late.
He's with the fight like hell faction of the Democratic Party, and Whitmer, surprisingly to some, has basically, as Zoe has just said, been very accommodating to Trump. Met with him in his office.
If you think about it, it's not surprising. Remember who she had dinner with growing up? A Democrat mom, a Republican daddy.
Yeah.
She had no choice.
Well, whatever.
Now, you're not buying that.
I don't think it was formed at that particular time. Her mother really took over in terms of her ideology because she was the Democrat. So Dick Whitmer was always a kind of militant Republican who are not even regarded as a Republican nowadays.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
All right,
I also think some of this, I mean, obviously it's being the Trump presidency is exacerbating some of this, but some of this is what we saw with Attorney General Bill Schuette and Governor Rick Snyder at the end of their terms as well. You kind of see a fraying between these once kind of united governor and attorney general positions, and I think that might be part of the issue here too, is that there's just some disagreements there, and they're starting to come out.
All right, let's call in our guest, Matt Koleszar, representative and former teacher. What did you teach, Representative?
I taught high school social studies and English.
All right, so let's apply that to this question. Are you concerned from an education standpoint that Donald Trump is going to wreck the system?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on today, Tim, and it's good to see you all. Yes, I'm very concerned. There are a lot of services that come from the federal government to the state of Michigan that right now are in peril. When I talk to teachers, when I talk to school administrators, when I talk to many people across the state that have student loan debt, there's a lot of concern right now. People aren't sure what's going to happen.
Well, but over the years, conservative Republicans have always wanted to eliminate the U.S. Department of Education. This is not exactly something new.
It's not something new, but I think this is some of the most dramatic action we've seen taken to attempt to dismantle the Department of Education. And what I think is most concerning is the students that this is going to affect are those who are in economically disadvantaged communities. So there's a lot of concern right now, especially for our at-risk population as well.
Representative, as a former social studies and English teacher, are you alarmed at student test scores in Michigan on the nation's report card that just came out, showing how they plummeted over the past few decades nationally and here in Michigan? What do you say to that?
Well, of course, I'm concerned. I think it's fair to point out, though, that the test scores that my colleagues across the aisle are continuously pointing out, there's one particular test score they hone in on. Well, there are other test scores we've actually improved. That being said, of course, I'm concerned and want to see us do better. That's why when you look back to 2023, we passed a budget with record funding. When you look back to last year, we passed a landmark literacy bill package that actually we were one of 10 states in the country that didn't even have a dyslexia screener. Now we do. It was bipartisan. It passed almost unanimously through the House.
Representative, the governor during her State of the State this year noted that there had been record funding for a period of many years for education, but that things aren't really improving with students. And I guess I was wondering what your take is on that, why you think things aren't improving even with record spending, and what more needs to be done at the state level to improve those scores.
Well, I think the old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day, is fair in this situation. We had a 19-year period from 2000 to 2019 where Michigan ranked dead last in the country for funding growth. So you have a lot of catching up to do from that. We also, whether people like to still talk about it or not, we did have a once-in-a-century pandemic. Now, that being said, I think we've taken a lot of proactive measures coming out of it. Again, the record levels of funding are part of it. The literacy package is a part of it. We've done things to increase reciprocity with other states to bring in more of our best teachers. I think we've done a lot of good things, but it's going to take time. Results don't happen overnight.
Representative, back to the federal government and the Department of Education. One of the things that we were talking about earlier is sort of just the amount that is happening, the brevity at which is happening. It can be hard for folks to keep track, and then what daily life will actually mean, from the impacts. As a former teacher, can you tell someone who is watching how their child or their grandchild, with cuts to the Department of Education or just the elimination of the department possibly, just day to day might affect a student in Michigan? What would that actually mean or look like?
Well, I think it could mean the cut of a lot of services, again, especially in areas of high need. And if you already are in an area where perhaps, your building is struggling, maybe you don't have the most advanced technology, maybe you don't have the most updated textbooks, some of that could continue to lag. And that's frightening. Additionally, if you are somebody who goes through the federal government for student loans, which unfortunately the cost of college has only gotten more and more expensive. And now all of a sudden you're wondering about loan forgiveness. Is that an option anymore? As many teachers who teach in Title I school districts receive student loan forgiveness after a certain amount of time. There's a lot of concern that that might go away as well, which means if you are getting into the field of education and you know that you could go teach in an area that really needs you, now all of a sudden you might not get your loans forgiven anymore, even though there is a desperate shortage in those areas.
Representative, would you concede that the young people that were taking your social studies class were not really up to speed on what's going on in government? In fact, some of them probably think that you are serving in Congress and not the legislature.
Well, I've always been a big proponent of adding civics to be a year-long course rather than a semester-long course. But then the question is, how do you make room for that in a high school curriculum? I've also been an advocate for making sure we have units that focus on state and local government. A lot of people can name, obviously the president, they can name their congressperson, but then you start getting to your state senator, your state representative, your mayor, or your township supervisor, and the answer is not always as clear.
Representative, you heard us talking about Matt Hall sort of running the show right now in Lansing. I'm curious, as a member of the House of Representatives, what is it like right now having Matt Hall as your speaker?
Well, I would like to see more emphasis on good government and not politics. A lot of times I feel like he is clearing legislation to go up on the board that he can send home on campaign mailers rather than worrying about actually legislating for the betterment of the state. So I wish he would focus more on that and stop focusing so much on politics.
Should the speaker be allowed to pick members from the minority party, your party, the Democrats, on committees, or should he defer to what the minority leader wants in terms of people serving on committees?
Well, Bill, as you know, it's always been longstanding precedent that the speaker defers to the minority leader. I mean, at the end of the day, the speaker is going to have the majority of his party on every single committee. Let the minority party's members serve where they feel they can produce the most amount of good. And unfortunately, this speaker did not adhere to that. This has been a little bit of uncharted waters for us.
Well, in fact, wait a minute, you're a living example. You used to be on the K through 12 budget subcommittee. Now you're sitting on a transportation committee, and other than knowing that you rode a bus once in a while, that's about your knowledge on it, eh?
Well, as much as that's fair, I do also still serve on the Education Workforce Committee on the policy side. But you're right, I used to serve on the K-12 budget subcommittee, and I no longer do.
Well, whose fault is that?
Well, it's certainly not mine. I don't make those assignments. Again, I'm in the minority party. I am a member of the Democratic caucus. And at the end of the day, the buck stops with the speaker.
Are your Democrats in your caucus unhappy with the committee choices that Representative Speaker Hall made for the committees?
While there might be some grumbling about who's on what committee, I think at the end of the day, all of us really do feel just privileged to serve. It doesn't matter whether you're in the minority or majority. You have 91,000 constituents at home. You care very much about them, and you just want to go to Lansing and do the best you can on their behalf.
What about Representative Tate? Is he still a pretty vocal, active member of your caucus? I mean, he was the speaker, and now he's been reduced to zilch in the public perception.
Former Speaker Tate still has a lot of respect within our caucus. We appreciate what he has done. He has always cared about the well-being of every single member in that caucus, and he still does.
Representative, is there going to be a state budget by September 30th at 11:59 p.m.?
Well, I certainly hope so. I know that when I talk to my colleagues on my side of the aisle, we all want to do that. The only person I've heard use the dreaded term government shutdown has been Speaker Hall. He continuously accuses us of doing it, but nobody on my side of the aisle is talking about it. He is the only one that continuously brings it up. So I think that's something he needs to reconcile for himself, because we haven't said that at all.
Why do you think that is?
Totally value. I'm sorry?
Oh, just why do you think it is? Why do you think he's so focused on that and that messaging? What do you make of that?
I think a lot of it's posturing. He is one leg of a three-legged stool that needs to get the budget done. There's still the Senate, there's still the governor, and he's only one of three. So I think a lot of it is posturing.
Are you a yes vote on the EV tax?
I don't even know what that looks like yet. I was a no vote on the original roads plan that we saw, and that's because that's not a bipartisan solution. So I need to see what a bipartisan solution looks like before I commit to how I'm going to vote on anything.
Well, do you believe that EV people are paying their fair share to fix the roads?
I think at the end of the day, we have a $2.6 billion annually problem that we need to fix. I think it's fair to say that there's not enough revenue going toward the roads, and we need to find it. Now, what that looks like, I don't want to get into specifics because I haven't seen a bipartisan.
With all due respect, the question was, are the EV people paying their fair share?
As somebody who does not own an EV, I don't know exactly how much they are paying. I know they do have some pretty high registration fees as of right now, but again, we also know fuel tax plays a lot into that. So I could see how you could make the argument.
What would be in a Matt Koleszar road plan? What would be in your plan?
In my road plan, we would definitely focus on where roads are being driven on the most. I live in Southeast Michigan, and Wayne County, Macomb County, and Oakland County see dramatically more traffic than the rest of the state. And I would like to see more emphasis on the areas that are the most populated.
Representative, I know you said you're waiting to see a bipartisan plan. Is there some frustration that there hasn't been movement from Senate Democrats? I mean, there's only so much you can do from the minority. I believe some of your members have introduced some roads funding bills, but in the Senate Democratic caucus, we haven't seen much. I mean, is there some frustration there that you haven't seen a proposal yet?
I'm not frustrated. I mean, after all, we're only in March of the odd-numbered year. I also think it's fair to say that this debate has been going on for a very long time. I think I even looked at some old articles from when I was still in high school, and they were negotiating a roads plan. So this is not new. But that being said, I think it's high past time we get it right. I'd rather see us get it right than make it a sprint.
Before cars were even on the roads.
On that optimistic note, Representative, always good to see you. Thank you for being here. Also, our thanks to our audience, and happy birthday to Bill, and happy
birthday, Bill.
And happy birthday to your hubby. What's his name?
Rick Pluta. Yeah, it's his
See you next week right here for more Off the Record.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by Bellwether Public Relations, a full-service strategic communications agency partnering with clients through public relations, digital marketing, and issue advocacy. Learn more at bellwetherpr.com. For more Off the Record, visit WKAR.org. Michigan public television stations have contributed to the production costs of Off the Record.